Now let's discuss the criticism of the liberal perspective. Okay. Now there are multiple criticisms of the liberal perspective, and there are certain critics who believe that liberalism is more authoritarian. So like it looks very like someone who validates freedom, someone as a like as a school of thought that promotes freedom, but it has become very much authoritarian because it relies on the central government. Then Macpherson has criticized liberalism on the ground that it promotes possessive individualism, okay, meaning that the individuals have very little and social collective concerns, right? So they say that itself, like the liberalism as a policy itself has exhausted, and it has led to become more inequality rather than like becoming social justice, right? Then, according to Foucault, liberalism should be approached not only as a critique of other forms of government, but as existing and potential forms of biopolitical government. So, like they say that, there should be an idea of the liberal democracy, okay, where the power, like the dispersion and division of power, could be like it could work as a disadvantage for the state during the wartime. So they say that like we should look at the past forms of government, and then we should apply this idea of liberal perspective, considering the existing situation and the potential forms of biopolitical government. So now I believe that with this we are done with this unit. Okay. Now in this unit we try to understand the concept of liberalism as a perspective. Okay. Then we try to understand the political, social, and the economic meaning of liberalism. That how like liberalists they wanted a free market and they just want the intervention of the government in a sense that they will provide them the resources and ways, and then the person individually should have the autonomy to make use of those available resources for their better use and in order to achieve their own needs. Okay. Then we discussed about the concept of neoliberalism and how it is different from the idea of liberalism. How like there is a complete like there is a society that believes like there should be an individual property rights, and there should be free market. And then we lastly talk about the concept of the welfare state. Okay. And we discuss that what are the problems that comes up with the welfare state and how it should be implemented and how it should not be implemented, right? So now let's move towards discussing the question answers for this unit. Now, the first question that we are going to discuss today is that what are the major limitations of the liberal perspective of development? Okay. Now, economic liberalization, it refers to a country basically opening up to the rest of the world. Okay. So there are, like you can engage in free trade without any rules and regulation. There is a proper system of taxation. There are like the areas that generally affect the business in the country. Okay. So in India, this policy of the liberalization, it was initiated in the year 1991. Okay. With the goal of making the economy like more service oriented, right? So it led to basically increase in unemployment. It led to the increase in dependence upon the foreign nations. There was an unbalance of development of sectors which ultimately resulted in economic inequality. Okay. Then another major critique of the liberal perspective, it could be such like the idea of the welfare state, like the state completely intervening just for the like the personal benefit is not a very applicable concept, right? So even though the idea appeals, it comes with its own problems, right? And then lastly, we can say that liberalism as a concept is very much exhausted. And like if there is any situation of war that comes up, the whole onus and the whole burden will lie on the state only. Now, let's discuss the second question, that is, to what extent should the state intervene in the social and economic affairs of an individual? Okay. Now, according to me, like everyone can have their own interpretation to this answer, right? But according to me, the state should intervene, but there should be a limit to the state intervention. Okay, so like the state intervention in terms of like the economic intervention, it should be such, it should be based upon the market conformity. Okay, but it should not affect the market directly, it should not affect the price mechanisms. In the social realm also, I believe that like the state have historically intervened in terms of social welfare. Like they come to rescue with the issues such as unemployment insurance. They come up with the like temporary assistance for the needy families. They come up with the ideas of free education. So like the intervention of the state, it should come into the places when there is like when there is a threat to the individual autonomy of the citizens. But other than that, the main objective of the state should be to maximize social welfare. And like the effort should be correct on correcting the market inefficiencies. And just like I said, that the state should impinge on the social welfare only, rather than like intervening in different other matters. Coming to our third question, that what do you understand from the term laissez-faire? Okay. Now, laissez-faire is an economic philosophy of the free market capitalism. Okay. And the people who support the idea of laissez-faire, they completely oppose the government intervention in the market, and they wanted the markets to be free from any government intervention. Okay. Now, in order to understand this concept in greater detail, we need to understand the history of it. Okay, the theory of laissez-faire, it was developed by the French physiocrats. Okay, during the 18th century. Now, these were the people who were, like who grew, who flourished extremely well in the 18th century during the French Revolution. Okay, now, laissez-faire, it advocates that the economic success is inhibited when the governments are involved in business and markets. Okay, now the term laissez-faire, it literally means let go. So basically, they support free markets free from the control of the government. However, the like the free markets, or the economists that support the idea, or they build the idea of the laissez-faire, they thought of this path as to economic prosperity. Okay, however, they have sometimes also criticized this concept of laissez-faire as something that has created inequality in society. Okay, so critics, they do argue that this idea of laissez-faire, it seems to be good for the society, but it is not, because even markets, even the economy, it does need a certain degree of the government's regulation and government's involvement in order to flourish. Okay, coming to discuss the last question, that is, write a short note on the idea of neoliberalism. Okay, now we have discussed about this in the unit also, so let's give a quick recap to it. Now, neoliberalism is an economic philosophy that emerged in the 1930s. Okay, now this was very much common in the European liberal scholars, and it was a reaction to the Great Depression that took place in the 1930s. Okay, now, these were the people who basically supported the idea of controlling the markets, right? And it was also a response to the ideologies of communism, of fascism, of social democracy that was being very much popular at that time. Okay. Now, neoliberalism, it is often associated with the economist Adam Smith. Okay, we studied about Adam Smith, and he argued that markets are governed by an individual hand. Okay, an individual hand in the sense that someone who governs the market, and he says that the markets, they should be subjected to the minimal government interference. So they did not wanted the government to participate in the affairs of the market to a great extent. Okay, but there should be a minimal participation. Now, neoliberals, they were particularly of the school of thought, they believe that the state should play a smaller role in managing the economy and meeting the public needs. Okay, so they wanted a free exchange of goods and services, but they wanted it with minimal intervention of the state. Okay, so hopefully this unit is clear to you, and thank you very much for your time.